Hi everyone and welcome to another edition of the Droopy Dog Gamer. I'm Leighton. If you like our content, please remember to click like and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow. Today we're looking at the news that broke earlier this week that the game studio Konami is dissolving its 3 studios all into one, and why this, I think, is very bad for football games in general. Roll the credits. So, earlier this week it emerged that Konami, the game giants of the 16-bit era, were condensing their game studios from 3 all into 1. They called it restructuring, but really it's condensing and making their business smaller. With Konami being the producer of FIFA Football's only competitor, Pro Evolution Soccer, this is not good for football fans like myself who spend hours and hours on football games each year. I usually buy both FIFA and PES. I'm a fan of both. I'm more of an offline player. I like the career modes or the master leagues, sinking hours and hours into building your teams, etc, that kind of thing. We all know that FIFA has ignored its career mode for year on year. Yes, we know FIFA has increased a few options this year and added a few new features into its career mode, but it's not exactly set the world on fire. FIFA has already become a rather glorified card collecting game with its Ultimate Team that creates them millions of pounds or dollars each year, and PES hasn't exactly been able to keep up with FIFA's online game. FIFA burst onto the scene back in 1993. It was an innovative game that boasted a brand new camera angle and it blew the competition away. The competition back then was Sensible Soccer. It was a really simple game that had overhead camera angles and it was completely unlicensed. Now, back in the 90s, FIFA dominated the markets for about 4 years until a little Japanese game came along called Winning 11. Winning 11 boasted tactics and rewarded slow build-up play, whereas FIFA was kind of a kick and hope game. Winning 11 with its brand new game engine back then and fluidity suddenly made FIFA look rather tight in comparison and structured. Winning 11 went on the following year to change its name to ISS, International Superstar Soccer, and a legend was born in the 16-bit era. Konami had a simple motto. They simply wanted to produce the most realistic football simulation they could. And it was simple and it was brilliant. Whereas FIFA was an arcade alternative. It was a goal fest. It pretty much carried on like this right up until FIFA 07 or the next generation of consoles. In 2005, a guy called Gary Peterson became lead designer for FIFA. Pro Evolution Soccer 6 was probably regarded as one of the best Pro Evolution Soccers that was ever made. This was the beginning of the turnaround. Gary Peterson was a massive Pro Evolution Soccer fan. The game had developed from ISS. He had a vision to change FIFA and make it a little bit more like ISS, with the benefit that FIFA had a growing library of licenses that they were using every year. This generation, FIFA really began to take hold of the football market. So if we take a look at the early sales figures, back in 2009, FIFA was selling 8.6 million games. PES was pretty close behind with 6.87. It was already beginning to lose its crown. FIFA had taken over in the game stakes. Unfortunately for Konami, this was a trend that carried on right up until present day. Each year, FIFA, with its growing licenses and growing development team, was producing a better product than PES could offer. And just 4 years later, if we take another look at the sales figures, we can see that PES had dropped to just 2.5 million sales that year, whereas FIFA was boasting 15.36 million. FIFA was slaying the giant. If we zoom to 2019, it was a real low point for Konami. The sales for the first time ever of Pro Evolution Soccer had dropped to below 1 million sales. Even the most hardcore FIFA fans would probably agree that FIFA has been in a slow decline since FIFA 16. That coincided with FIFA's brand new cash cow, FIFA Ultimate Team. The online game mode was suddenly really innovative. You could place and build your own team against your friends. And EA suddenly realised this could make them more money than the actual sales of the video game itself. Pro Evolution Soccer had dissolved into such a small game with such a loyal, hardcore set of fans that FIFA really didn't have much to worry about. With all its massive licensing and its game options, its online game options, it was the king of football games. There was no alternative, and still to this day, the things are the same. This brings us up to present day. Right now, we need another developer to sit down, take a look at what's out there, look at the consumers that are screaming out for a football game that's kind of a cross between Football Manager and FIFA, and make us the video game that we want. EA, they go after Ultimate Team. That is their cash cow. They've really ignored the career mode player like myself for years and years. So if we look back at what Konami have produced in 2020, it's absolutely nothing. All they've produced is PES 2021, the update. Now I can see why they've just done the update and rather an innovation of the game is because they're concentrated on PES 2022, which will be on a brand new game engine with a new graphics engine in it on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. And so they want to spend time, and especially obviously combine that with the COVID situation and everyone's locked down working from home. I can completely understand why they're just doing the update, or why they've released the update. But the future of PES, I think, is in doubt because of Konami and the position they've taken on the video games industry as a whole. If we look back, the last decent AAA game that they released outside of Pro Evolution Soccer was Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, and that was 2015. You know, you're approaching 5-6 years ago, and so there's just very little, I think, to get excited about if you're a fan of Konami games. And they own such fantastic IPs: Castlevania, Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid was just a brilliant game. If a new Metal Gear was coming out, you would get so excited. And you know, Metal Gear Solid alone was responsible for selling a lot of PlayStation 2s. But now that Konami as a publisher is just a shadow of its former self, which I think is really sad. Now, what we could see happen is Konami could end up just becoming a publisher, which I think will probably happen. I think they will just look to other companies to produce and create and develop games for them, and they will just publish the game, which again I think will be rather a sad state of affairs from such a great game developer, and especially one that was a little bit quirky and a little bit innovative. You know, there was no other game like Metal Gear Solid. It was always a very unique, special game, and so we miss that innovation when we lose the competition in video games. And that comes back to the football games, that if all that's left is FIFA, then where's the innovation going to come from? Where's the striving to be the best football game? It will be the only football game. And I think that if Pro Evolution Soccer's numbers continue and it just continues to drop from 500,000 to 300,000, 200,000. It's not a cheap game to produce. There's licenses that they own and they have to buy and pay for to use, such as Manchester United and Juventus. These are not cheap game licenses to buy, to use. And so eventually there's going to come a point where if the game numbers carry on dwindling, PES will either just slowly disappear altogether. And I think now would be a great time for a games publisher or a games developer to develop something that is unlicensed. Nobody can compete with EA and FIFA on licenses, but PES has proved over the years that you don't need the licenses to succeed. And even if somebody produces a football game that is second best in terms of looking, a bit like PES to FIFA, the presentation's always been second best, but people buy PES because of the gameplay and solely because of the on-field gameplay. And if another developer came in and did something like that and made an innovative football game that was almost like a cross between Football Manager and FIFA, but with that better simulated football rather than FIFA's arcade, I think it would be popular. I think it would be what people are screaming out for. But I just don't think it's going to be Konami at the moment. We will see. Only time will tell. I could be really wrong. PES will be on the Unreal Engine 5, so it's going to run on that, which I think that's an awesome game engine, and I think this PES 2022 will be the defining moment of PES, because if Konami don't get it right, and if it is behind FIFA too much in graphics and the gameplay doesn't really beat FIFA, I think that is the end for PES. I don't think people are going to tolerate the poor refereeing, and we know the standard problems on PES. And I'm a huge PES fan, and I hope I'm a huge football video games fan. I like both FIFA and PES. I play them both, and I hope for video games football's sake, I hope that PES is really, really good, so that there's competition for FIFA. And I hope a games developer comes along and sees this gap in the market and would perhaps develop a game, and it would take 2 years, at least a minimum of 2 years, to produce anything I think that could even compete with what we have now in FIFA and PES. So I hope a game developer comes along and thinks, okay, it doesn't need the licenses. PES has proved that. As long as there's a brilliant editor on it and a really well developed editor that you can create your own teams, create your own players, and more importantly, if you can download the files and swap the files. I know Xbox are a little bit funny about that, but PlayStation and PC, that is what has kept PES alive, is the editors. And I think we could have a really good football game as well as FIFA, and I think that will keep FIFA innovative, and it will keep them on their toes producing what the fans want. So I'd really like to know what you guys think. Do you think we could do with another games developer making another football game to rival FIFA, or do you think we've got enough with PES and FIFA as it is? Please leave your comments at the bottom. Also, don't forget to click like and subscribe if you like our content. It really helps the channel out. We'll see you next time.